In a quiet suburban neighborhood, Clara and Daniel had spent a decade building a life together. To outsiders, they seemed like the perfect couple, solid, devoted, unwavering. Yet behind closed doors, cracks had begun to form, small at first, but deepening over the years. Clara felt trapped, suffocated by the predictability of their marriage. A longing stirred within her, an unspoken desire for something more. Daniel, ever the devoted husband, remained blind to her growing discontent, believing their life together was as steady as it had always been. But Clara's heart had already begun to drift, drawn toward a man she had met 6 months earlier at a work event, a man named Julian. Julian was everything Daniel was not: spontaneous, adventurous, thrilling in a way that made Clara feel alive. He reignited something in her, something she had buried beneath the routines of marriage. The more time she spent with him, the more certain she became that she could no longer stay in a life that no longer felt like her own. One evening, as the golden light of sunset spilled through their living room window, Clara stood before Daniel, her heart pounding. "I think we need to separate," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel froze, the weight of her words hitting him like a physical blow. His expression, a mixture of disbelief and pain, mirrored the crumbling foundation of their marriage. "Separate?" he repeated, his voice strained. "Clara, why? We can work through this." But Clara had already made up her mind. What she didn't confess, at least not yet, was the true reason for her decision. Daniel, unwilling to accept her words, pleaded with her, reminding her of the vows they had made, the life they had built together. "We promised to stand by each other, no matter what," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I won't give up on us." Frustrated, torn between guilt and her yearning for freedom, Clara finally let the truth spill out. "I've been seeing someone else," she admitted, the words cutting through the air like a blade. Daniel's face drained of color. He stood in stunned silence, the betrayal settling into his bones. When he finally spoke, his voice was eerily calm. "Is that why you want to leave?"
For him.
Clara lowered her gaze, nodding. She braced herself for anger, for accusations, for an explosive reaction. But Daniel surprised her. Without raising his voice, he simply said, "If you're willing to throw away everything we've built for someone you barely know, then I won't stop you." Without another word, he turned and walked to their bedroom, packed a small bag, and left. Clara stood frozen, watching his car disappear down the street. She had wanted freedom, yet as Daniel drove away, a strange hollowness settled in her chest. In the weeks that followed, Clara pursued her new life with Julian, convinced she had made the right choice. Yet what had once felt intoxicating soon turned stale. Julian, so thrilling in secrecy, lost his allure in the light of day. He was not interested in building a future, he thrived on the excitement of the forbidden. Without Daniel's steady presence, Clara's world felt unmoored. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly pieced his life back together. He moved to a new city, threw himself into his career, and rediscovered passions he had long set aside. He joined a hiking group, something he had always wanted to do but never pursued because Clara had no interest. He attended social gatherings, made new friends, and slowly, the weight of heartbreak lifted. His colleagues noticed the change. He seemed lighter, freer, as if he had shed something that had been holding him back. Clara, on the other hand, found herself trapped in a cycle of regret. The love she had taken for granted was gone, and Julian, never meant to be more than a fleeting escape, drifted away. She had traded security and devotion for a moment of reckless passion and was left with nothing but the echoes of her choices. Haunted by what she had lost, Clara spent weeks crafting an apology letter to Daniel. Every word was a confession of guilt, sorrow, and the painful realization that she had made a terrible mistake. She sent it, not knowing if he would respond. When Daniel received the letter, he read it with a calm that would have been impossible just months before. The words were filled with regret, but they no longer had the power to wound him. He had spent too much time rebuilding himself to reopen old wounds. Clara asked to meet, and though hesitant, Daniel agreed. They met in a quiet cafe in their old neighborhood. As Clara sat across from him, her hands trembled. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "But I wanted to tell you how sorry I am. I made a terrible mistake, and I hurt the one person who always stood by me." Daniel listened, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he took a deep breath and met her gaze. "I appreciate your apology," he said gently. "It takes courage to admit when you've done wrong. But the truth is, I've moved on. I can't go back to what we were. Not after everything that's happened." Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but she nodded. "I understand. You deserve better than what I gave you." Daniel offered a small, bittersweet smile. "We both deserve happiness, even if it's not together." As they parted, Clara felt a finality she hadn't expected. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. Years passed, and life took them in different directions. Daniel met someone new, Elena, a kind-hearted, adventurous woman who shared his love for the outdoors. With her, he found a love that was effortless, secure, and free from the shadows of his past. Clara struggled to let go, but she refused to remain lost in regret. She sought therapy, focused on her career, and threw herself into community projects, searching for purpose in helping others. The road to healing was long, but she walked it, step by step. One evening, while attending a charity fundraiser, Clara spotted a familiar face across the room. Daniel, standing beside Elena, his hand in hers. They looked happy, truly happy. A pang of sadness gripped Clara's heart, but it was accompanied by something else, relief. He had found the peace she had denied him. Daniel noticed her, too. Their eyes met, and he gave her a polite nod. She returned it with a small smile, silently wishing him well. She had no intention of interrupting his new life. Seeing him content was enough. The encounter, brief as it was, marked a turning point. The chapter had finally closed. Clara no longer clung to hope or guilt. She focused instead on the person she was becoming, a woman who had learned from her mistakes, who now understood the weight of love and the cost of taking it for granted. For Daniel, seeing Clara again stirred no resentment. He had forgiven her long ago, not for her sake, but for his own. In the years that followed, both Clara and Daniel flourished in their own ways. Daniel's life with Elena grew richer, built on trust and understanding. And in time, Clara, too, found love again. It came later than she had expected, but when it did, it was built on honesty, patience, and the wisdom of a past she would never forget. As the years unfolded, Clara and Daniel continued along their separate paths, each carving out a life rich with meaning and personal growth. Clara, once burdened by regret, had transformed into a woman of purpose, cultivating the emotional depth she had long neglected. Daniel, having found a love that brought him peace, embraced the life he had always dreamed of with Elena. Their wedding was a small, intimate ceremony, filled with laughter and warmth, surrounded by those who had witnessed Daniel's journey from heartbreak to healing. With Elena by his side, he built a life defined by joy, mutual support, and the quiet certainty that love, when nurtured with patience and trust, could flourish in ways he had never imagined. Their home echoed with laughter, their days filled with adventure, and when their daughter Lily was born, Daniel felt a kind of happiness he had once thought unattainable. Clara, too, found fulfillment in ways she had never expected. She immersed herself in community work, mentoring young women and sharing the hard-earned lessons of her past. Her honesty was striking, her willingness to lay bare her mistakes a source of inspiration to those who feared they too were beyond redemption. It was during one such event that she met an older woman named Margaret, whose words lingered with her long after they had parted. "Life is a series of chapters," Margaret had said, her voice gentle but firm. "And sometimes, the best ones come after the ones we regret the most." The wisdom of those words stirred something deep within Clara. She had spent so much time atoning for the past, but perhaps it was time to embrace the present. Inspired, she began writing, pouring her soul into a memoir that chronicled not only her mistakes but the lessons they had taught her. The process was cathartic, forcing her to confront the pain she had caused and endured. When Burned Bridges and New Beginnings was finally published, it resonated with readers who saw in her story a reflection of their own struggles. The book, though modest in success, became a testament to the power of growth, self-awareness, and the capacity for change. While Clara found her voice through her writing, Daniel and Elena's life flourished in adventure. They traveled across the world, hiking through the Andes, exploring remote villages in Southeast Asia, and sleeping under starlit skies in the Rockies. Each journey deepened their bond, each shared moment reinforcing the foundation of the life they were building together. Parenthood only strengthened their love. Daniel adored Lily with every fiber of his being, marveling at the joy that came with fatherhood. Despite the passage of time, faint echoes of their past lingered in the periphery of their lives. Occasionally, Daniel would come across Clara's name in articles praising her work, and he would feel a quiet sense of pride for the woman she had become. Clara, in turn, would stumble upon a photograph of Daniel with his family, his arms wrapped around his wife and daughter, his smile easy and content. There was a bittersweet pang in her chest when she saw those images, but it was no longer the sting of regret, only the quiet acceptance that some love stories were not meant to last, but rather to teach. Years later, at a charity gala honoring Clara's contributions to the community, fate placed them in the same room once more. Clara, dressed in elegant simplicity, graciously accepted her award, unaware that among the attendees sat Daniel and Elena, their presence tied not to her, but to the cause they had both come to support. During the mingling hour, as the evening softened into quiet conversation, Daniel approached her. Elena, understanding the moment, gave them space, offering a reassuring smile before stepping aside. Clara, Daniel said, his voice warm but steady. Congratulations. I've heard about all the incredible work you've been doing. Clara turned to him, her lips curving into a genuine smile. Thank you, she said, her voice carrying no trace of the sorrow it once held. And your family is beautiful. Lily is adorable. Daniel's face lit up with pride. She's the light of my life. A brief silence stretched between them, not awkward but thoughtful. It was Clara who finally spoke, her words sincere, carrying none of the weight they once might have held. I'm truly glad to see you happy, Daniel. You deserve all the joy in the world. Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded, his expression one of quiet understanding. And I wish the same for you, Clara. His voice was steady, kind. You've come a long way. I hope you know that. Their conversation was brief yet profound, a quiet acknowledgement of the past, a recognition of the growth it had brought them both. No apologies were needed, no lingering wounds reopened. It was simply two people, once entwined in love and loss, now standing as individuals who had forged their own paths. As Daniel returned to Elena's side and Clara rejoined her table, a sense of peace settled over them both. There was no longer any longing, no lingering what-ifs. They had each become who they were meant to be, shaped by the lessons of their past but not bound by them. What had once been a story of betrayal and heartbreak had transformed into something else entirely, a testament to resilience, to growth, to the human heart's unyielding pursuit of happiness. And as life carried them forward, their separate journeys remained proof that even the most painful endings could lead to the most beautiful new beginnings.